All right, what's up, everybody? I should probably be going to sleep, but I'm so, All right, if you guys have been following my Game of Thrones opinions, well, first of all, hi, everybody. I'm fired up. No, but hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight on this Sunday night at 11:42, 43, whatever time it is, p.m. If you've been listening to my opinions of Game of Thrones so far, you'll know that I've defended this last season. I've felt that this last season of Game of Thrones has mostly been good, surprisingly to most people, I guess, because most people have thought it was bad. I thought episodes 1 and 2 were very, very good. I thought episodes 3 and 5 were very, very good. I thought that episode 4, the first half, was very good. And then a number of things in the second half of the episode was terrible, horrible, sucked. But I defended the season because I thought, in the end, it would all pay off. And I have to say it did not. It was really... The funny thing is, I don't even... Again, this has been my feeling about the whole thing, the whole show. I'm not against where it went. We're gonna get spoilers here. So the reason I'm on live stream right now and not tweeting this stuff out is because I don't want to spoil it for people who just are scrolling through Twitter. So if you don't want spoilers, you should not be listening to this because I'm gonna be spoiling it like crazy, everybody. So I have no problem with Bran becoming king of the Seven Kingdoms. I have no problem with Sansa becoming queen in the north and it becomes independent. I have no problem with Tyrion living and becoming the hand to the king. I have no problem with Arya going west to see what's west of Westeros. I have no problem to see what happened to Daenerys. I have no problem seeing what happened to Jon. It's just how they got there sucked. It was so bad. And the weird thing is all the pieces were there to make it good. It was disappointing, man, because everything they could have done was right there. All right, let's explain some. All right, Bran becoming king of the Seven Kingdoms. All right, that's cool. Let's give a little about what got him there. Tyrion saying what he said about how everyone... Tyrion saying what he said about no one had a better story than Bran. Nobody knows his story as far as we know. Why would all those people get behind Bran? No one knows about Bran. Why would Yara jump behind Bran unless I guess she found out that her brother died protecting him? But again, we don't have that. Why would, so many of those things happen concerning Bran? They allude to the fact that Bran knew he was going to be king when he said how he traveled all the way there because he expected it. And excuse me if you hear my cat screaming in the background. It's that time of the night where my cat likes to act like it's I guess how people would act in the afternoon or something. You're running around going crazy. So why not give us something like that? Like, did Bran know that he was going to be king back when they were fighting the Night King? I'm assuming so, but we don't really know that. That would have made it so much better in my point of view. Second of all, another thing that really bothered me is, and this, I guess, has nothing really to do with what we saw in this episode. It's more to sort of do what we didn't see in this episode and didn't see at all. The fact that Bran had this power, even if it was accidental, even if it was a mistake, when we found out that he could do this when he was with the original Three-Eyed Raven, or the previous Three-Eyed Raven, I should say, where he's looking over Westeros back before he was born, when his father was a child, and he sees a young Hodor, and him being sort of in both worlds, and Hodor hearing the current present day hold the door going into the past and affects young Hodor. Fine, that's cool. We see that the present / future could affect the past. It meant nothing more than that. Literally, the whole point of introducing that very crazy, meaningful power is to just explain why fucking Hodor just said his name over and over again. How that should have been like a foreshadowing of, hey, look, this power exists in this world. Even though it was a mistake, it's going to come into play later on for something more important than Hodor. But it didn't. How I can't even begin to talk about how lame that is. Really, so dumb. So dumb. So stupid. And continuing on, just how they failed the Bran story arc. Alright, so Bran is now king of the Seven Kingdoms. I guess the Six Kingdoms now because the Westeros... because the North doesn't count. But... fucking Meera Reed. What happened with Meera? So she shows up with her brother. Not sold like her brother was, because her brother, she didn't have the visions her brother did. But she joins Bran on this journey across the wall. She does everything in her power to save Bran's life so he could become the Three-Eyed Raven. Busts her ass to get him there and back. Loses everyone that was with her along the way, including her own brother. Gets there, and Bran is a dick to her and just basically just says, whatever, I'm not Bran anymore. Fine. And she goes home, whatever. We're never introduced to her again. We never hear from Meera Reed again. And the whole... fine, if she was some random, fine. But the whole fact that her father is the guy Bran sees who saves Ned Stark's life when they're storming the castle to save Ned Stark's sister, Howland Reed. So Howland Reed saves Ned Stark's life, is the only person there alive with Ned Stark to find out that Ned Stark's sister had a son with a Targaryen, Jon Snow, and we're never introduced to him present day. Not only are we never introduced to him present day, they do introduce his daughter, who saves Ned Stark's actual son's life, and then we just never hear from her again after getting him back across the wall. It's just so stupid. What's the point of even having those connections? It's pointless. It's utterly pointless. Why do that? And I've saved that, I've defended that show nonstop, man. But I thought this last episode was a complete disappointment. Okay, so Jon Snow kills Daenerys. Cool, I get it. Drogon melts the throne, flies off with Daenerys' body. Okay, I'll accept it. We cut to the scene where all the leaders of Westeros are discussing what to do with Tyrion and Jon. Are you kidding me? How lame was that? And first of all, you want us to believe that after we just saw the Dothraki and the Unsullied raping and pillaging King's Landing, that after finding Jon, after he kills their queen, they take him captive and hold him as a prisoner? Wouldn't they just have murdered him right there? They were ready to murder everybody else right there on the spot. Seems bizarre. Seems bizarre to me. But let me read some comments and see what people feel like. Listen, I'm a little bit angry because I really like this show. I honestly think it's the best show that was on TV. And it got me really excited for what was possible for television. I think this show is better than the way this show was for those first couple of seasons. Not even couple. I think for those first 6 or 7 seasons. Hell, I even liked most of the episodes of this season, season 8. But it excited me because I enjoyed it more than most movies. For 73 episodes, I think it was, they were able to build up a number of characters in a way that even 2-3 hour movies can't do. So it was fun to watch a show sort of show what the future of storytelling could be. If I'm going to get romantic about it, folks. And they blew it in the end, I think. They blew it. But what could you do? What could you do? Let's read some comments here. Ryan says, "Hello, everyone. I'm working, so I haven't seen it. But after the first 5 episodes of this season, I can only imagine how blindingly stupid the ending was. Left is best. Have a good night, all." Well, thank you, Ryan. And I disagree with you. I really enjoyed the season. I just think this episode needed to tie up a lot of loose ends, and they spent a lot of time bullshitting around, and I don't think they did any of that. I think this last episode was really bad. And I'm not even complaining about where everyone is in the end. I think it's a great bookend, actually, to have Bran become king, to have Sansa become Queen of the North, to even have Jon end up back at the Night's Watch, but really ending up going across the wall and where he belongs with the Wildlings. I thought that was all great. I had no problem with that. But it's just how they got there was super lame. And really bad, if you ask me. Norwegian says, "I haven't seen the finale, and I'm not sure I'm going to. And this is someone that loved the books and loved the show until it ran out of original material. I've grown more steadily, more pissed since." Well, I liked the season, and I'm just disappointed in the end. Abby, "Finale was better than most of the season, in my opinion." Wow. All right, Abby. "Not great, but last half was a lot of fun." Right, last half was a lot of fun. It didn't feel like a series finale. Felt like it should have been in, like, the second to last episode. There really should have been a 7th episode this season. At the very least. Brett says, "You should watch it, Norwegian. It's worth talking about, in my opinion." Abby says, "Bran is the benevolent dictator we need." But we don't even see that. I thought maybe at the end they would leave us with something that hints that Bran is going to be like the others, or Bran had some sort of nefarious purpose, or that Jon was going to go. To me, when I saw Jon lead the Wildlings across the wall, I thought, wow, they're going to bookend it with with a scene reminiscent of the very first scene of the very first episode, showing that, the White Walkers are still out there. But they didn't do that. Ollie says, "Doomed." Well, not tonight. This is not an official episode of Doomed. It's a fun episode, a little bonus material. The Norwegian says, "Bran is indeed supreme. He is all-knowing." Champagne Communist said it was fine. Like Matt's new haircut. Thank you. Brett says, "My 3-word review of this episode: knowledge is power." Abby says, "Oh my god, he did get a haircut. You were kind of looking kind of mountain man." Right, well, that was what I guess I was looking. Mountain man. Alright, I'll take it. I believe someone called me Jon Snow last episode. I don't look like Jon Snow. Anymore, at least. The myth of Sisyphus. Tyrion, Bran should be king. Bran stares into the middle distance. Zombie over on Periscope says it was really rushed. Abby says, "Because Yara is smart, don't talk shit about Yara." I really liked Yara. They did her dirty by having her show up for 5 seconds in the first episode of the season and then 5 seconds in the last episode of the season. I think it would have been pretty meaningful to give us a little bit more. Find out that her brother died protecting Bran would have given a lot more meaning to her getting behind Bran, no? Norwegian says, "The journey is the whole point, and that's what sucks about the show writers. They can't do storytelling. They just show conclusions but fail to convey how they came to be." Benjamin says, "Bran cereal. Brett says to the Norwegian, I think everyone agrees with that. Right, that's my big problem with it. But I also think most people are just pissed about Daenerys' story arc. And I don't have a problem with it. I thought that was really good, and I thought that was where they were foreshadowing and where it was going and where it should have gone. Abby says, yeah, I can see this exact same plot being done well in the books. The thing that bothers me, though, is that if this is the end that George R.R. Martin has planned, which by all means I believe he does, because I strongly believe that as much as everyone thinks differently, I really do believe that these major storyline points, like Daenerys going Mad Queen, are the parts that George R.R. Martin laid out for them. The idea that that's how it ends, though, with Jon just going across the wall. If it ended with something not right about Bran, or if it ended with the White Walker threat still out there, because it will forever be a threat as far as we know. I'd have been more fine with it. I would have forgiven a lot of things because the story goes on, even though we won't see it. But this was a pretty strong end to the story. I guess the idea that Drogon is still out there, but why does that? What's a pet gonna do? Nothing really. Abby says he found out about a cool wheelchair. Right, yeah. Sijack says brought me to tears, amazing ending. I mean, again, there were some good points to it, and I'm not mad about how it ended in terms of where everyone ends up. Just think there's too much just unanswered, I guess. I guess Jon was the prince that was promised simply because of the idea that he kills Daenerys, or maybe Arya was the princess that was promised. Because remember in Valyrian or whatever language it was, prince / princess is gender neutral. I'm fine with that, but they didn't really. And the idea that Lord of the Light was a throwaway there, and I guess, religion is just that mysterious still, even though the idea that religion's mysterious doesn't make sense when we know that the Lord of the Light is a real being. Like, it's not like real life where we don't know if there's a God or not because he hasn't shown himself in any sort of fashion. I mean, we know the Lord of the Light exists by what Melisandre could do, and we just get nothing out of it, but Sir Davos saying he shows up, we do his bidding, and then he fucks off. I mean, seems kind of lame. Nice that, I guess, Brienne got to say a fuck you to dead Joffrey, who, if you remember, laughed at the fact that Jaime Lannister had a blank page in the book. That she got to fill out the book for Jaime. I thought the scene with Tyrion finding his brother and sister in the rubble, I thought that was a powerful scene. Made you care more about Tyrion, even than you already did. I thought it was a very strong scene for Tyrion. The Daenerys stuff was great. It sort of made her demise a little bit less powerful. I don't know, man. I don't know. This episode didn't do it for me. Abby says Brienne's scene brought me to tears. I mean, I guess. I mean, it was a strong scene, but Benjamin says, I thought this was a discussion of the failed Telltale game version of Game of Thrones. Bap, bap. Kim and Periscope says what trash that episode was. Matthew Film Guy over on Facebook says, righteous nerd rage, my brother. The Myth of Sisyphus says he did use his see in the past power to figure out John was the heir, but then that didn't go anywhere. Right. Sidejack says, I love the fact that John joined the Wildlings. Right, like Mance Rayder, right? I mean, I guess he becomes king of the Wildlings in a sense. It was great that he gets to end up with Tormund and Ghost, but sort of weird that he was forced to do that. Abby says, John repopulating the far north with wildlings didn't. Sidejack says, too much thinky, Matt. Love you. Peace out. Go ahead and nitpick this shit to death if that's what makes you happy. Winky face. I mean, I'm not really angry. I'm just sort of like, in the moment, I'm a little bit angry. Who am I fooling? In the moment, I'm a little bit angry. Because I really liked the show. And I defended the season because I thought the season was pretty good. Even though it was rushed. That was my number one complaint. And I just felt like it didn't pay off in the end. Abby says, did he join the Wildlings? That makes sense, but you think you'd see him breaking with the Night's Watch. Well, I mean, part of their job in the first place is to go out there. I mean, that's what Benjamin would do. So it's not that far off. Brett says, Arya's my favorite now. She's an explorer. I'd watch that. Yeah, they sort of did keep that sort of open, right? Benjamin says, Jon Snow, leader of the DSA. Abby says, Arya's a colonizer. I don't think that. I think she's just going out to... Abby says, Matt, you're mad about book plot. It's fine. It'll be in the book. No, I'm not mad about what happens in the end, really. I'm mad about how they got there, and it made it weak because that's how they got there. I think George R.R. Martin, if he lives to actually write the damn books, I think he'll have those same endings, but it will be better because the road there will be better explained, I guess. Better fleshed out. Sidejack says, I think it's pretty obvious he joined the Wildlings. Castle Black is basically empty except Tormund and his crew. Right. Benjamin says, Game of Thrones featuring Nick Mullen. Sidejacks. Bran, Sansa, et al. Knew what was up. Sidejacks. They were sending him to join the people he loves. Abby, why are the Night's Watch even there? Sidejack says they weren't. It was all wildlings. Right. Because there's no more point for the Night's Watch, is there? Because there's no more threat across the wall. I don't know if you noticed, but not many wildlings left, right? It was all kids. All the children of the wildlings, pretty much. Sidejack says, I thought it was pretty clear in the montage, right? I think so, too, that he was going to be with the wildlings. Abby says, I thought he was leading the wildlings to repopulate the north, but makes sense he's joining them, I guess. Sidejack says it was a ruse to get Grey Worm off their ass for sure, right? And Grey Worm's just going to, what was it, Noth? Wherever Missandei was from. That's where he's going. I guess to protect her people, like he promised her. Sidejack says, you really think he's going back to Castle Black? The Myth of Sisyphus says, Grey Worm is such a follower. They just had to say, we're going to make a new king, and he's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, that didn't make sense to me. Benjamin says, 1 out of 7 people are all direct descendants of Jon Snow. Damn, wild. Carlos says, I was expecting to see a final scene with White Walkers alive. We never saw anything about the zombie babies. What was their purpose? Well, I'm assuming they just grew up to be... They were grown up by the time... The Caster... What is it? Caster, right? Caster's Keep was gone. So, I mean, they were grown up by then. They were the people who walked in with to Winterfell with the Night King. I mean, you have to remember a lot more time has passed in during the show than what we're watching. The myth says, except then he demands Tyrion be punished despite saying he supports a new king, and the new king says Tyrion goes free. Well, he was just demanding a bigger punishment in general, I think, for what had happened. And that punishment was Jon to be sentenced to life at the wall. Sijack says, I like the fact they didn't reintro the White Walkers. Would have been worse. I don't think so. Warlord says this sucked, right? Renee says, not going to say anything. You got a big tanky about this. Well, sorry. Benjamin says, oh, hell yeah. Game of Thrones was better than 99% of movies I've seen in ages. Right. It was really a testament to what can be done now with characters. I mean, that's, to me, always a great movie or show has always been about building up characters you care about. And this show had a ton of characters that you cared about because they spent so much time building characters. You know, I was talking with my girlfriend and she pointed out that, you know, in an earlier season, after discovering what happened to the Umbers, an old season of Game of Thrones probably would have given almost the whole episode to Beric, Tormund, Ed, and the rest of the Night's Watch and the Wildlings traveling from the Wall to get to Winterfell. And that would have been a lot of building of those characters. We would have really discovered something more about Beric, Tormund, and Ed that would have made it more powerful when two of those characters died, and we probably would have cared more, even more than we already did about Tormund. Like, a lot of Game of Thrones was about the traveling, and look at Brienne and Jaime's whole relationship. Yet this season just jump cut for the traveling, which deprived us of all that character building that made each character so strong in the earlier seasons. I mean, to me, that's what's most disappointing. And that's what I'm complaining about, really. And the reason I'm complaining about specifically what happened in the finale, after defending the earlier episodes this season, it was I thought maybe they'd pull through in the finale with all the things that I was hoping to see. And I knew they wouldn't do all the things, but at least some of the things. I mean, the idea that it was sitting right there with the Hodor thing, that part of the thing that could have influenced Daenerys was her own father yelling, burn them all. And Bran could have been the accident, like he could have accidentally or purposefully, which it would have been powerful. The fact that we now know he's king, how crazy would that have been to have seen him while she was fighting Cersei, to see him jump to that point where the Mad King is screaming, burn them all. And also have jumped to King's Landing. And for Daenerys to have somehow heard her father's voice or something. I mean, it would have been... Maybe some people think that's corny. I would have enjoyed seeing that. It would have given something to it all. Or, if you don't want to go that route, I thought he would have jumped to the Mad King saying burn them all. I don't know, at some point during the fight with the Night King or something. I don't know, something to connect everything together. Because as right now, with how it is, the Night King was a completely separate battle that had nothing to do with the broader picture. Really, nothing to do with the broader picture. There was nothing that weaved together the Night King and the whole Game of Thrones, the game to get the Iron Throne. And I mean, how is there not? That's my complaint, I guess. Maybe I'm being too picky. Warlord says Bran is a terrible choice for king. Sansa should have been queen. Jose says the way the council picked Bran, it did not make sense. Right. Why would Grey Worm listen to that council? Why would he give a shit? Abby says Bran is omniscient. Who could be a better king? But he admits he trips balls and hangs out in the past most of the time. Warlord says Bran is inhuman. Renee says, and what's worse, you're going to have to find the comment funny. Here's another thing. What if Varys never got a single letter out there? No one felt strongly that Jon should have been king? What, because he killed Daenerys? Any other king kill the previous king, they become the king. We've seen it already. Robert's Rebellion was built on that. Makes no sense. Abby says, I don't get why Grey Worm just let them choose a new king. Right. The Norwegian says, the show was only good when it was based on George Martin's books. That's when it did storytelling and the character portrayal great. It's been a mess for the last seasons, progressively getting worse. Benjamin says, overthrow feudalism, Bran. Right, I agree with the Norwegian. Carlo says, also it seems weird how it goes from a dark theme to a comedy sitcom at the end. Right. Jay says, season 7 should have been the battle with the White Walkers. I agree. It's like what Walking Dead did when they jumped the shark by introducing Negan. Instead of ending the season with a big character death, they began the next season with 2 big character deaths. It was a mistake, especially if it wasn't going to weave in with the rest with the big picture at the end. George says, I didn't watch this whole season, but saw all the others. Sounds like the showrunners made cinematography decisions over good story decisions. Yes, and a great point to that is the entire purpose of Bran during the Great War, the biggest battle they've ever seen, the Long Night, the fight against the White Walkers and the Night King. Apparently, the most important character who the Night King wants to kill, Bran Stark, the Three-Eyed Raven, his role in that battle is to warg into a bunch of crows, and just give us that cool shot by putting the camera in a first-person point of view with the crows to bring us up above the clouds to where the Night King is riding on his undead dragon. Literally his entire purpose. The myth says knowledge is power, power is power. Renee says check out Grey Worm's music career. Resist the Swamp says, hey Matt, haven't seen your stuff since months ago, watching your Majority Report stuff. Wow, that's a long time ago, right? Yeah. Benjamin says, Bran grows up to become hit rapper NBA stupid ass. What? Renee says, Bran gives me the shits. Dinah Cat says, I heard they left a Starbucks coffee cup in one scene earlier in the season. Like no one working on the season gave a damn. Resist the Swamp says, I haven't been watching Game of Thrones because I wanted to wait till it's over so I could binge. I will say this. I think HBO has something. I know it's an old-fashioned way of putting out TV. But I do think part of the reason that made Game of Thrones so great was the idea that we all had to watch it together when it first came out every Sunday, once a week, dropping that slow drip, that dropping of an episode. I think the reason why Netflix hasn't had any show that's as big as Game of Thrones, aside from the fact that Game of Thrones was a type of story and sort of show that has never been done before in terms of just the grandiosity of it all. I think just binge watching and dropping every episode at once. I know it's old-fashioned to watch TV shows once a week as they drop a new episode, but I think there's something to it. I mean, maybe sitcoms, comedies, certain types of shows you couldn't just put out there to binge watch, and it won't. The show won't be affected by it. But a show like Game of Thrones, like an epic like that, I think if it all was just dropped at once, some people would have all watched it on day one. Some people would have watched it over the weeks. Some people would have watched it over months. And you just wouldn't have had that whole, 6 days of people talking about it and speculating and putting their theories out there, which I think helped build the mythos of the show, to be quite honest. Maybe I'm an old man saying I want TV to be like how it was. But I think there's some shows you can just drop all at once and let people binge watch on Netflix. And other shows, I think, will be hurt by the fact that they won't be released once a week. So people can talk about it, digest it. Wilco says, John and Tormund, true OTP. I do like the fact that John and Tormund and Ghost end up together. I think there could have been a better way to do it. It sort of takes away from it that John is forced to do it. I thought it would have been beautiful for John to realize after seeing everything he saw that that's where he chooses to be. But Renee says, so this is like having IBM build a computer to govern? Abby says, Bran's going to warg into Drogon because he will fly. Brett says, Bran is still questionable, especially when he knew he would end up on the throne. I trust him even less. Resist the Swamp says, hey, Binder, you still talk politics? Hey, Resist the Swamp, I have a weekly show that's both published as a live stream on YouTube and Periscope and as a podcast, an audio podcast that's about politics. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. I actually did not have one last week. I had some things come up, but I will have one, probably more than one, in the coming weeks to make up for the missed one. I'll have a show this week, obviously. Abby says, more like the Chinsta was promised. Benjamin says, Deep Blue stands up for the chess gamer rights. Renee says, Lord of Light has quit the chat. Abby says, yeah, they were killed by a dozen bricks. Yeah, it was a bit weird. Abby says she could have at least had some last words. You talking about Daenerys? No, one thing I like about this show is that people died. There were no real unrealistic fact that people die for however as long so they get those last words out. We saw people in their last moments. Just these past few episodes with Beric, Ser Jorah, Daenerys. They sort of died how you would die in real life. You just, when you get stabbed like they did, you die. You don't get this cinematic last words. Resist says, do you think this last episode redeemed them? This last episode was right. I liked it. I liked where everyone ended up. I just wish they got them there better. It was so weird and rushed, and that cut from Jon killing Daenerys and Drogon flying off to everyone just in the dragon thing, whatever. I didn't like that. Resist the Swamp says, Matt, are you on Discord? I am. Resist the Swamp says, did this episode redeem this season? Any tips for watching Game of Thrones as someone who waited till it was over to binge? I actually really like episodes 1, 2, 3, and 5. I really thought they were really good episodes. And most of episode 4, the best stuff in episode 4 is really bad, but it is what it is. And I think this episode wasn't so great. Resist, I say just power through it, watch it, get it over with. I would say watch episodes 1 and 2 together. Then watch episode 3 by itself. Then watch episode 4 and 5 together. And then watch episode 6 by itself. I think the build up to episode 3, episodes 1 and 2, fantastic. I think episode 3 paid off. I would have probably killed off one more major character. Just a really major character. Just to drive home the threat that the Night King was. But I really liked it regardless. Sorry. Wilco says Tyrion's dialogue taking Dany's past acts of liberating slaves and forcibly contextualizing them in a Mad Queen narrative was nauseating. I sort of was looking at that as him actually saying that they built the monster, and that while she was right then, it built up this person who thought they were always right. And I thought that made sense. I mean, it does say a lot, though. I mean, I know the argument's been all those people deserve it. The slavers and the marine masters and everything. I get it. They were terrible people. But I always read it as Daenerys is supposed to be different than everybody. The idea that she did no different than the previous king, she did no different than Jon himself. She's supposed to be different than all these people. She's supposed to be the one who's going to, change it, break the wheel. And the idea that she could have taken these people captive or captured them and just imprisoned them. But no, she chose to just execute everybody who she felt was wrong, even when they were wrong, even when they were bad. She just chose to execute them. I mean, she was just like everybody else when that was her whole selling point, right? That she wasn't. That's why I didn't have a problem with that. And again, I don't think he was putting those acts in there, even as I'm doing it. I think he was just saying, when she was right, we cheered her on, and it built up this idea in her mind that she was always right. And I think that makes sense, because that's what we saw. John says they should remake the season. It's never going to happen. And I don't feel so strongly about that. It is what it is. Renee says Night's Watch, much like the East German border guards. Okay. Brett says the foundation will be there in the book, so the decisions won't seem so out of character. Right. But again, I don't think he's going to make the books. I think he's not going to make it. I mean, he's got 2 books to go. And by all accounts, he's not even close to finishing the second to last one. Let alone started on the last one. John says they should remake the whole season once the book is written, right? Yeah, if you want like a 45-year-old Jon Snow, some of those actors probably might be dead. It's not gonna make any sense. John says, will there be any more episodes? Well, I mean, there's gonna be apparently there's a prequel that's gonna start filming during the summer, and 2 more being written. So we're not gone from the Game of Thrones world, but we're done with this story, as far as I know. But I don't think we're gonna see these characters ever again. I mean, I do think if they really wanted to, they could visit an older Jon at some point. I do think if they want to, they could visit Arya. I think everyone else is gone. I think there's no more anybody else. I think if we revisit Bran and Tyrion, we're retelling this story. The only way to continue the only 2 characters I feel like you can continue with without retelling the story, which they clearly don't. The story is bookmarked and done, finalized, end of the chapter, end of story, it's done. Is Jon and Arya, because they're divorced from that world now. Caesar says Bran evil. Bran let Dany burn King's Landing to become king. If he would have told Jon before, thousands of innocent people would still be alive. He saw himself voted king, so he saw the future. Well, did he though? Did he really know? That's my question. They don't really make it clear, because they never say he can tell the future. He just could tell the past. No, he just knew what happened in the past. Everything that happened in the past. Everything, everywhere, pretty much, he knew. And he could discover what was happening in the present by showing up anywhere, by walking into whatever. But they don't really determine, in my view, whether he can really tell the past, or if he's just able to tell the most informed decision of where things will go, based on knowing everywhere in the present and everything in the past. Eric says, so disappointing, Bran the beta. Renee says, what girlfriend? She's your Misa Misa. Abby said, we'd find out that Ed is on probation. Renee says, evil kid looking at a house fire meme. Abby says, that's a joke about his character on Ideal. Javier says, greatest ending ever. Brett says, they needed more time, we know. The Norwegian says, what you're saying about traveling applies to all episodes written by D&D. They replaced it with teleportation, right? Abby says, I would have loved a 15-year-old Jamie Kingslayer scene. Right, that would have been good. Matthew Film Guy says, definitely were a lot of time cuts. Shorthand drama and exposition. Heavy scenes this season. Still enjoyed it, but it became a regular TV show a while ago, right? The Norwegian, not much character building during teleports, right? Champagne says, this is the only season I've seen and it was good TV, lots of action. I'm a simple man. Listen, the action in the season was great. Interestingly enough, the best battle is still Battle of the Bastards. Really fantastic. I could rewatch that episode over and over and over again. I don't think there'll ever be anything, at least for a very long time, that comes to that. I think Battle of the Bastards, from the storytelling to the filmmaking, the cinematography, the directing, the acting, I think is just perfect. I think that should be, that the whole episode, especially that scene, should be taught in classrooms. Fantastic. Renee says you missed out on the porn to Champagne Communist. Michael says this season needed 10 episodes. D&D took unnecessary shortcuts. Did HBO make the call for 13 episodes instead of 20, or was it D&D? From what I understand, is HBO wanted 10 complete seasons. So 10 seasons of 10 episodes. And D&D wanted 8 seasons. And then towards the end decided those last 2 seasons shouldn't even be full seasons. Matthew Film Guy says, endings are always harder than setups. Asking questions is always harder than answering them. Shows like Lost made that popular, and Game of Thrones set up so much it was bound to be a stunt of the highest difficulty to land the plane in a way that wasn't at least somewhat disappointing. I agree, and I think that's the reason why George Martin's never going to finish the books. I don't think he knows what to do. I think he does not know what to do. Simple as that. Problem is, I think some very simple things would have landed the plane a lot better. Listen, I've seen some ridiculous fan fiction out there that people wanted to see that would have, they feel like would made the story much better. Something I saw was some sort of scene where Grey Worm, the Hound, and Arya team up to try to save Missandei or some shit like that. What the? That's like some hardcore like fan shipping right there. I don't even know what to call that. Why would the Hound and Arya give 2 shits about Missandei? So I'm not someone who wants a happy ending or everyone to go where I wanted them to go. I saw where everyone went at the end, and I said I agree with where everyone went. I thought that was the ideal way the story was going. But they just explained and how they got there shitty. That's my problem with it. So landing the plane wasn't the plane landing wasn't the problem for me. I guess it was the actual journey home. I guess that bothered me. Champagne Communist says it's very old-fashioned. Binge watching is the. It's very old-fashioned. Oh, to the idea of dropping episodes once a week. It's very old-fashioned. Binge watching is the modern era. Please get with the times, HBO. Francis X says hashtag Binder Gang. Abby says shows gotta bring back cigarette sponsorships. Champagne Commie says anime does the old-fashioned release 1 episode a week thing. Francis X says Game 7, Thrones 1. Renee said we could have Doom the viewing parties. Rigardo says D&D wanted only 7 seasons, and the 7th season should have been 10 episodes. But HBO wanted 8 seasons, so D&D makes 13 episodes for 7 and 8. Rigardo says Bran is the mastermind of the Games of Thrones. He played well. Brett, the problem with anime is they never stop making episodes. I'm not watching a show with 500 plus episodes. Renee says, ugh, much like the groan I keep hearing. Brett says, this episode was okay. Look at Breaking Bad if you want to learn how to end a series. Ricardo says, episode 6 was the best episode of season 8 because the Game of Thrones are back. Renee says, check out Balling Out Super. Thomas says, everyone hating this season apart from... Renee says, focusing on protecting the HBO crown jewel, Westworld. Keep it polished, keep it simple, no forks on the road. I like Game of Thrones better than Westworld. Sorry, Renee. And I thought Westworld's good. Francis Zek says, hashtag John Brown did nothing wrong. Renee says, you got played, Dark Gritty, by D&D and Bran. Renee says, ranking base Game of Thrones with songs and all. Listen, I thought the Game of Thrones soundtrack is fantastic. The songs of Game of Thrones were beautiful. Wonderful. Brett says, I see this weird blend of cynicism and optimism in Matt. It reminds me of myself. Abby says, okay, falling asleep. Peace. Good night, Abby. Casper says, was not a good ending at all. Betty says, do the cinnamon challenge. What? Renee says, Suicide Squad Westeros. Boss Hog says, do you like midget? I'm not going there, Boss Hog. Essay on Periscope says, when is the next podcast on Crazy Republicans? It's coming up. We'll do an episode this week. Matt Film Guy says, Mary's fanfic is that they figure out Tyrion is a Targaryen and ends up marrying Sansa and they rule the kingdom together. Nah, I don't like that. Cushhead says they killed it today. Rodrigo says, I love Lost. Why do you compare this with this horrible ending? Cushhead says, hashtag he did something wrong. And Boss Hog says, I like to watch Honey Boo Boo while eating tubs of ice cream. Okay. Thank you. Alright, folks. We're going to call it a night. It was fun. I gave my feelings of the episode. It is what it is. I get it. But it was a great show. One of the best. I enjoyed watching it. If you haven't watched it, watch it. Enjoy. It's a great show. Even though it could have been better. That's my feelings on it. We'll have an episode of Doomed this week. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/MattBinder. Subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can follow along with all the stuff I do, whether it's fun little stuff like this. We'll do more pop culture, fun TV, movie stuff, if you guys like it. But we got the regular weekly podcast of Doomed with Matt Binder, which deep dives into crazy right-wingers, the fringe right, conspiracy theories, the craziness going on in the 2020 primaries, all of our wonderful current events and politics. That's why the show is called Doomed. See you guys later. Have a good night. The last season was rushed, says Yakub. And Chip says, happy birthday, Malcolm, and today. Alright, guys. See you all next time. Oh, what's this? My cat is being annoying. He's asleep, and he's being annoying. I didn't realize, Renee, that you listened to my cat. Champagne says, good night, Legion of Doom. Brett says, click that like button. Chip says, happy birthday, Malcolm X today. Right. Yakub says the last season was rushed. Did I read that already? Champagne Kami says, good night, Legion of Doomed. And Francis says, Doomed! Good night, everybody. Take care. Go watch Game of Thrones again. Good night. So disappointing.